By this agreement, India was permitted to receive the nuclear fuels from the nuclear suppliers group, and that a lot of activities around that started in India for the nuclear power, and that when the Fukushima happened, actually, the two plants in the south of India were already under construction for 1,000 megawatt each, and immediately the people living around, the civil society's response to the Fukushima was to ask this to be stopped. The one plant by that time was almost getting about 95% complete, and another one was almost halfway through. So we had at that point of time a lot of delays. The only good thing that it did was that it forced the government to look at all the standing power plants and first, I think, check on safety and declare that the safety checks have already been made. But the next power plant series, which is coming at one place, which is going to be 10,000 megawatt supplied by Areva from France. Well, this has again a little bit gone into an issue. So the government position still remains very strong for the energy security. Another reason, for strategic reasons, as well, my call to go for nuclear, there is a huge civil society pressure of re-looking at the issue, because generally the belief in Asia or in the world is that if Japanese cannot manage the technology, we can never be able to manage it or something, you know. And so I think the Fukushima definitely had a very strong influence on the current dynamics in the Indian nuclear power. But where it's going back again, we do find that actually that out of necessity, the India might go through the nuclear cycle anyway. Thank you.
Thank you, Professor Shukura. I wonder whether Professor Takamura's question also aimed at China, included China, or no?
Nuclear.
Yeah, impact of Fukushima to China's nuclear policy.
Personally, I have very strong concern on nuclear, both in Japan and China. But anyway, in terms of China, before Fukushima, China is supposed to construct a new nuclear power plant every 3 months, something like that. And after Fukushima, they stop the planning and they do some security check, and then now they are start again the planning and construction approval. And so maybe from 3 months per 1 unit per 3 months to probably one plant per 4 months or 5 months. But anyway, the speed of the construction of nuclear power plant is amazing and to some extent incredible. But again, it's an issue of national sovereignty or energy security. Also, some people argue this is for climate change, something like that. And in terms of civil society, I don't know which country is more progress in terms of civil society between Japan, China, and India. But I think China also has a big problem in terms of civil society, power of civil society. But also some NGO or some people are protesting the construction, especially local people having some voice to construct the nuclear power plant, because they have more information and they do have some Facebook or those Twitter, something like that. So I think it's getting more and more difficult to, even for Chinese government to construct new power plant. But still the idea plan is very amazing.
Thank you very much. Professor Miranda-Schulz.
Thank you. I'll say maybe to 4 points. On the nuclear question, I think everybody's heard about what it meant for Germany. And the German reaction was also, if Japan can't handle it, we shouldn't expect that anybody can. And the German view is also that nuclear doesn't really have much of a global future because it's simply too expensive as a technology, that it's also been very heavily subsidized in the research area. And to say that it's a cheap technology is only because you haven't looked at the subsidies it's received over the decades. On the question of greenhouse gas emissions, the European Union 20% target is legally binding, which means that all member states are required to jointly meet the 20% target. And each member state has a target underneath the 20% target, and they are legally required to meet that target. Therefore, if Germany's CO2 emissions increase, and they might increase a little bit more than was planned before the nuclear phase out, Germany will have to find another way to compensate, for example, through the clean development mechanism or some other mechanism. The second point on this is the German thinking is maybe there will be a short time with somewhat higher CO2 emissions as you phase out nuclear before the renewables are really in place. But the long-term impact will be to help drive down the costs of renewable energy, and that will be a larger contribution that Germany can make to the global CO2 emission problem than just trying to reduce CO2 emissions at home, because if renewables can be made more affordable, then they can become widely distributed also in countries like China and India and Nigeria and South Africa, and there the contribution is much greater than it would be no matter if Germany were to completely reduce its CO2 emissions domestically. German CO2 emissions are about 3% of the global total. The point on what about the big industries, the steel industry, the cement industry. I'll admit they're not completely happy about what's going on in Germany. They see it as a very big struggle. How do you get stable electricity, affordable electricity? There's a debate that is not completely answered yet. One is the question of CCS and to what extent there will be carbon capture and sequestration used. A second question is the extent to which natural gas can be used in those industries to continue their operation. And a third is the potential for developing storage capacity, which could also be made available, plus biofuels, which could be made available as a base load. That is, of course, an industry that will be a difficult industry to satisfy. It is also expected that they, too, will increase their energy efficiency dramatically. So they're not being given a loophole in terms of the expectations. And the third question, or fourth question about what do we do about facilitating the developing countries. The German approach to this has been to try, and not just German, the European approach has been to try to finance assistance for developing countries through the profits from the emissions trading system. And what is a bit of a problem is that the cost of carbon right now is so low that the income that's coming in from the emissions trading system is lower than was anticipated. But the expectation is that the price of the carbon units will increase again. And as that increases, there will also be more funding both for helping to facilitate the transition to renewable energy and to facilitate developing countries. It's also important to note that in Durban, the European Union agreed to work with the developing countries to keep a second phase of the Kyoto Protocol alive so that the clean development mechanism continues to operate until we have a new global agreement in place to replace it. So I think that's what Europe is doing right now.
Thank you. Thank you very much for responding to different questions. それではですね、Now,
it is already 12:30 and we need to end, but this is indeed a great opportunity for us. So let us utilize this valuable opportunity, and there are already hands up. So I would like to entertain 3 or 4 questions. As we have done so far, if you could please identify yourself and also indicate to whom you are addressing your question to. And since the time is limited, if you could be very concise and brief. Please, starting from there.
文部科学省